Sa pagpapatuloy natin, ang magtatanong naman ay si Attorney Rolex Suplico. But bago ko siya, I have a question for Professor Carlos. You're wearing your sunglasses, even if there's no sun anymore. Baka po pwede niyong i-share sa amin, bakit po kayo naka-shades today?
Oh my Lord. How did I explain this stupidity? You know, I just had cataracts removed, and those damn lights, you know, they're so bright. They were not there 2 weeks ago. Si Rolex kasi may kasalanan eh. Dapat pinalitan ko. So, may I beg your indulgence, please? I didn't mean to be impolite, no? Wearing this, and I know, hindi nga ako nasa beach, no? Karen, apologies, ha? Apologies, please. Magiging 75 din kayo, kaya nalimutan ko magpalit. Salamat, Karen.
No, thank you, Professor Carlos. And I'm very happy to hear that you didn't enter the witness protection program. I was worried for you for a while. Okay. So, ang unang magtatanong ay si UP Professor Dr. Clarita Carlos. Dr. Carlos, your question, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I was listening to all of you as you presented your priority bills, even when you become senator. In fact, I was taking down notes. So those are excellent proposals, and I can imagine that if all of you were to be elected senator, we would indeed be heading towards a better Philippines. Thank you. Of research is foreign policy, defense and security, so it will not be a surprise that my question will be within that particular issue area. The United States has just announced plans to deploy nuclear warheads in Japan. Ostensibly, this is part of the Indo-Pacific security umbrella, which is going to be established following the Quad, which is also working towards a collective security alliance. As a Senator of the Republic, what will be your position in regard to this matter?
The first candidate to answer this question is Ms. Attorney Balita.
Attorney Belen?
Attorney Agnes. Yes, it's really Mr. Balita.
All right, thank you for that question. You know, I trust that our participation and our collaboration with the democracies of the world will help us, and our mutual defense treaties and agreements with the multilateral relationship with other countries should be tapped towards that. As far as the collective security alliance is concerned, the Quad that you have mentioned, Madam, I would presume that the world is watching, and I am confident that we are not in the mood for war post-pandemic. And the most that we can do is to strengthen our positioning, our defense capability, and to cushion the impact on our basic requirements like fuel, food, and other related stuff. I would always be mindful that the democracies of the world in our alliances will be there to collaborate for a peaceful resolution of whatever conflict there are.
But would you have problems with having nuclear warheads in Japan, as U.S. has planned?
Well, certainly it's not for us to say, ma'am, but it's their decision. But I think the Quad itself, Japan being included in it and the USA being included in it as well, would have better reasons for doing so. And our concern will always be our foreign policy, which should be inward-looking, and our foreign policy that will protect the interests of the Filipinos and the Philippines, not only in the Philippines but also in Japan and in America, where conflicts may just arise resulting from it. I will trust that the world is not in the mood for war, and that we are a democracy of the world that would influence each other in seeking peaceful resolution of whatever conflicts there could be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Balita. And apologies for the mix-up earlier. I have two lists, and we're going from left to right since Attorney Bailen gave the first opening statement. So we will move on. Same question to Mr. Castriciones.
Okay, so of course, as always, whenever we talk about nuclear warheads, it creates a lot of fear amongst our people. And whether we like it or not, of course, we can never persuade the Americans not to pursue such kind of plans, or military plans for that matter. But just the same, as part of the community of nations, we can actually choose where we have to side. And definitely, whether we would become neutral for as long as there would be threats from amongst these countries, the Philippines will always be a part of it. In fact, we all know that we can never isolate ourselves from the interaction of these countries, particularly the relationship between China and the United States of America. And for that matter, we have to take sides no matter what happens. We have to put a position that would have to place our country in a way that we will be able to protect ourselves.
Yes, but similarly with Dr. Balita, would you have any problems with having nuclear warheads in Japan?
Of course, yes, ma'am, definitely. If there would be nuclear warheads in Japan, then basically this would create some sort of a countermeasure coming from the countries that would be opposed against such actions. And we all know, if we would recall the Cuban crisis, wherein the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics have actually placed the so-called missiles in Cuba, and definitely there was a reaction coming from the United States. And what will stop China from doing the same? And probably if this will escalate, it will create a war. And that is definitely a no-no for us.
Thank you.
Attorney Panelo.
Ma'am, as a senator, I will raise my voice of concern and apprehension. I'm against the deployment of nuclear warheads. We know for a fact that if you use that, it will be the end of the world. I do not think that any country would agree to the use of nuclear warheads. We have to use international diplomacy on whatever problems we have. We cannot be threatening people or countries with deployment of warheads. That is precisely why we have international diplomacy. We have to use negotiation table to solve whatever differences we have between countries.
Thank you.
We'll follow up. Okay. Thank you, Attorney Panelo. Ms. Legarda.
Having been the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, Professor Carlos, and our dear audience, I would always take into consideration the dimensions of foreign policy, namely economic, political, the welfare of overseas Filipinos, not just in Japan, but in all areas who will be affected by the deployment of these warheads, as well as perhaps cultural diplomacy. And every stretch of that must be exhausted. As a student and administrator of national security, I would also take into consideration the 5 dimensions of national security, which would include socio-economic, political, even religious, and ecological dimension. All of these have to be discussed, not just by one senator, but a 24-man and woman Senate and the whole Congress, so that the chief executive could be advised accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Roque.
As a professor of international law, I submit that nuclear weapons are illegal. One, because they are incapable of distinction under the law of international humanitarian law. And number two, they cause cirrhosis, superfluous injury, and unnecessary suffering. I am therefore against putting nuclear warheads in Japan. Secondly, it could run contrary not only to our constitution, which prescribes that the Philippines shall be a nuclear-free zone, it also runs contrary against an ASEAN treaty declaring the whole of ASEAN as nuclear-free. Number three, in terms of foreign policy, I believe that there should be strict adherence with the UN Charter. There should be strict adherence with Article 2.4 of that Charter, which prohibits the use of force, and the mere possession of nuclear weapons could constitute the threat of use of force, which is equally prohibited under the UN Charter, in the same way that actual use of force is prohibited. I enjoin all countries to comply with Article 2.3 of the UN Charter, which encourages everyone to resolve disputes peacefully.
But Harry, if this comes as part of the package of the Quad, what will your stand be?
As of now, we're not part of Quad, and I'm glad we're not. Because if we become part of Quad, we would inevitably be involved in an arms race and might be involved in a conflict that will not have anything to do with our national interests. Our national interest is to achieve prosperity, to be friends with our neighbors in particular. We have no fight with any country, and we have no wish to be dragged into any armed conflict.
But since your mutual defense treaty has not been abrogated and is still in force, we continue to be a defense ally of the U.S. So
we are, but for all intents and purposes, that's a dead treaty. Because when China took away 2 of our islands, the United States did not come to our assistance. That's a dead treaty.
Thank you.
Mr. Marcoleta.
The warheads, Madam, are a source of fear and concern for all humanity. That is why, as an elected senator, I will air my concern and probably advise the administration that we should be advised and by the state policy that our country has to pursue an independent foreign policy, and it also talks about our relationship with other states. That the primordial consideration are national sovereignty, territorial integrity, our national interest, and the right to self-determination. And guided by that, Madam, I'd like to advise the administration that we have a UN Charter to uphold, that these warheads are really prohibited under the law, under the Charter, and therefore we should abide by the Charter, and we should take the diplomatic course in every issue that confronts the world and in our country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no follow-up question from Professor Carlos. Thank you, Attorney Marcoleta. Attorney Gadon.
I do not agree, or I do not agree to the idea that the U.S. should deploy warheads in Japan, because it will only escalate the tension between China and the U.S. And since we will be caught in the middle of the whatever tension or hostilities that may arise in the future. So I am not in favor of it. And if we should learn our lesson from the Ukraine, the U.S. has been posturing for the defense of Ukraine, and they did not. Russia invaded it. And when you talk about the 1952 treaty, the defense treaty, as Secretary Roque pointed out, hindi na yun applicable.
So that means if you are a senator, you will abrogate the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. And even I will even urge the government not to enter into this Quad arrangement.
But will neutrality fly?
Well, yes, I would rather adopt the neutrality stand.
Thank you.